name is Karen Mitchell, and I'm the Senior Director for the MCAT program at the AAMC. During the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to talk about the new MCAT exam and how you might begin using it in selecting your 2016 entering class. So when the application cycle opens this summer, your admissions committees will get scores from an MCAT exam that tests new things. It'll test knowledge and skills that were recently rated as key to entering student success. Because the new exam tests new things, the scores will be reported on different scales than the old scores. But these new scores will be more reliable, providing you with better information about applicants' academic preparation. So in the next few minutes, we'll talk about 4 questions. We'll talk about what the new exam tests, what score information it will report, how you can use these scores in 2016 selection, and what tools will be available to admissions officers and committee members to make good use of the new test and the new scores. So we all know that change is hard, but there are good reasons to change the MCAT. Periodic reviews of standardized tests are good practice. It makes sense to look at a standardized exam every 15 years or so to make sure that it continues to measure the most important things in the most capable ways, and that time had come for the MCAT. So the old MCAT exam was introduced in 1991, and the last 25 years have seen important changes in health. Our population has become more diverse. There have been important changes in scientific knowledge and other changes that have changed the way you practice medicine and the way you educate your students for research and practice. The blueprints for the exam reflect all these changes, and they're evidence-based. So over the course of the last few years, a 21-member review committee called the MR5 Committee reviewed the old MCAT exam and made plans for the new one. The committee included medical school deans, admissions and educational affairs deans, student affairs deans, diversity affairs officers, basic and clinical sciences faculty, pre-health advisors, and other baccalaureate faculty, and it included a medical student and a resident. And the committee did an enormous amount of fact-finding. They gathered input from participants at over 90 outreach events, asking them what they liked and didn't about the old exam and what they hoped to see in the new one. They also collected survey data from over 2,700 medical school and baccalaureate faculty, medical students, and residents. They asked the medical school respondents what knowledge and skills students needed to have when they walked in the door of medical school in order to succeed. And then they asked the undergraduate faculty which of these important concepts do they teach in the introductory coursework in their programs. The MR5 committee also solicited input from a number of blue ribbon panels, including the Scientific Foundations for Future Physicians Committee and the Behavioral and Social Sciences Foundation for Future Physicians Committee. In the end, the MR5 committee recommended an exam that tests things that were rated by your faculty, residents, and medical students as key to entering students' academic success. Importantly, the new exam shifts the focus from testing what applicants know to testing how well they use what they know. So it asks applicants to use their knowledge to solve important scientific problems. It also asks applicants to think like scientists by reasoning about research designs and results and drawing conclusions from them, and it underscores the critical roles that behavioral and sociocultural factors play in health and illness. So it aligns with your curricula that recognize that tomorrow's physicians need to understand how behavior interacts with biological factors to influence health outcomes and how social inequities impact patients' health. The new exam also recognizes the heavy information processing requirements of medical schools, and it asks your applicants to understand and critically analyze text. And finally, it reports scores that are more reliable than the scores that you've received in the past. So these more reliable scores provide you a broader view of your applicant's academic preparation. So what is the new exam test? So I want to start by saying that everything that we'll talk about is described in a guide that we hope you've already received. That's called Testing Academic Competencies with the 2015 MCAT exam. So that guide describes the knowledge and skills that the new exam tests. It provides example questions that are easy, medium, and hard for MCAT examinees, so you can see what students are working with on test day. And it also describes the things that were done in developing the exam to ensure that it's fair. So if you haven't already received the guide, it's available on AAMC's website at www.aamc.org/admission. So you'll find the PDF for the guide there. So the exam that will launch in just a couple of weeks includes 4 sections that have very long names. And so the names are the Chemical and Physical Foundations of Biological Systems section, the Critical Analysis and Reasoning Skills test, the Biological and Biochemical Foundations of Living Systems section, and the Psychological, Social, and Biological Foundations of Behavior test. So how do the old and new exams compare? So the new exam, of course, requires broader preparation, as we've already said. It also asks students to apply what they've learned. And so like the old exam, the new exam tests concepts in biology, chemistry, and physics. It also tests verbal reasoning, but it includes some new exam content. So for the first time, students will be tested in biochemistry, psychology, and sociology, and it includes some new emphases. So students, again, will be asked to demonstrate that they can apply what they know. They'll also be tested on concepts that are important in learning about the behavioral and sociocultural aspects of health in medical school. And the new Critical Analysis and Reasoning Skills section takes advantage of the most recent science on information processing. So the new exam is organized around big ideas in the sciences, and these big ideas that are on your screen right now mirror the entering medical student competencies that were described in the Scientific Foundation for Future Physicians committee report. So as you probably know, that committee defined the competencies that they think medical students should graduate with, and then they walked those concepts back to entry, and they said, okay, if we're going to succeed in teaching those competencies, what do students need to know when they enter medical school? And these are the concepts that they talked about. And so I'll read one of them to you. The first one says, biomolecules have unique properties that determine how they contribute to the structure and function of cells and how they participate in the processes necessary to maintain life. So in order to demonstrate that students understand that big idea, they have to understand, they have to have some knowledge about a number of concepts, to include the structure and function of proteins and their constituent amino acids, the transmission of genetic information from gene to protein, the transmission of heritable information from generation to generation, and the processes that increase genetic diversity, and the principles of bioenergetics and fuel molecule metabolism. So again, they've got to use this knowledge to solve problems on the test. So the test questions generally start with some text that describe a scientific problem. There might be a table, a graph, or a chart that goes with them, and then the questions require that students show that they can reason with scientific principles, theories, and models, that they can evaluate scientific explanations and principles. They can demonstrate that they understand some of the bigger concepts in scientific research, so they understand some scientific methods, and also that they can interpret data presented in tables, figures, and charts. So the psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior section is organized in the same way. So it's organized around 5 big ideas in the sciences, and I'll read 2 of them to you. So the first one says, biological, psychological, and sociocultural factors influence the ways that individuals perceive, think about, and react to the world. Another says that social stratification and access to resources influence well-being. So in order to demonstrate those concepts, students have to exercise the same scientific reasoning skills that we already talked about for the natural sciences sections, and they're working with concepts like perception, attitudes, behavior and behavior change, stereotype threat, social identity, cultural and social differences, and social inequities. So the critical analysis and reasoning skills section has a different organizing structure. It recognizes the heavy information processing requirements of medical school, and so it asks applicants to demonstrate that they can comprehend, analyze, and evaluate what they read. They can draw inferences from text, and they can apply arguments and ideas that they're reading about to new situations. So again, it uses the latest science on information processing and asks students to work with text from a wide range of humanities and social sciences disciplines, including population health, studies of diverse culture, and ethics, but applicants needn't come to the exam with specific subject matter knowledge in their area, in those areas. All the information that they need to answer the questions appears in the passages themselves. So we've been field testing questions for the new exam since 2013, and since that time, over 113,000 students have volunteered to try out questions for the new exam. So in 2013 and 14, students who are taking the MCAT exam volunteered to take about 30 questions that we were testing out for 2015, and those students in registering for the exam had told us what courses they'd already completed. So students got questions about topics that they'd already studied. So students who took biochemistry got biochemistry questions, students who took psychology, a psychology course got psychology questions, and so on. And so we were able to use these data to see how well the questions were working. Before we used the data from the students, we made sure that the volunteers represented the population of MCAT examinees, and they did. And so then we were able to look for questions that have the right statistical properties, so they're, appropriately difficult, and they discriminate between high and low performing examinees. They correlated in the ways that we expected with the course taking that students had done, and then they also correlated in kind of logical ways with students' work on the operational section of the exam. So the new exam will be built with questions that met these criteria. So let's turn now to the scores that the new exam will report. And there's another guide that actually will describe everything that we're going to talk about in the next few minutes. It's called the new score scales for the 2015 exam, and it describes the score scales. It shows you what the score reports will look like for the new exam, and then makes suggestions for using these data in 2016 selection. And if you don't already have a copy of that guide, you can find it at the URL that's on the screen. So this is what the new score reports will look like. They'll provide lots of really great information, and we'll talk about all of it, but just to give you an advanced organizer, the reports report the students' scores, of course, on for each of the 4 sections, and then in total. They place confidence bands around the scores to remind admissions committee members not to overinterpret small differences in scores between applicants. They give you the percentiles that are associated with applicants' scores, so you can see how applicants compared to others who've taken the same exam. And then on the far right, the score reports show a score profile on the 4 sections of the test, so that you can see examinees' strengths and weaknesses on the 4 sections in relationship to other information that you've got in the student's application about the courses they've taken and the grades that they've made. So we talked a lot about the fact that the new exam tests new things, and because it does, it will report new scores. So and the score scale for the new exam is designed so that it doesn't overlap with the current, with the old scores, so that there's no confusion between scores from the old exam and the new exam. We didn't want them to range from 1 to 100 so that they wouldn't be confused with percent correct scores or percentile scores, and we wanted to avoid kind of other scales that might cause confusion. So as you'll see in a second, the new score scales emphasize the center of the scale with a nice round number in the same way that the SAT and the GRE scales do. You know, that those scales are centered at around 500. So this scale follows that same kind of convention, and the section scores total to the total score. So here is what the new scores look like. So the total score is centered at a score point of 500, and the scores range from 472 to 528. And the section scores are centered at 125, and they range from 118 to 132. So the reason that these scales draw attention to the center of the scale is we know from past data that students who enter medical school with scores at the center of the MCAT score scale do just fine in medical school. The vast majority of them graduate in 4 and 5 years, or 5 years. They pass their licensing exams on the first try. So we wanted to draw attention to these students and focus attention on some applicants who might otherwise be overlooked. So this new score scale is consistent with the way that you conduct your holistic review. So I know these score ranges seem odd, and you don't have a way to attach any meaning to them yet. So we'll spend the next few minutes talking about the scores and the information in the score report so that you can begin to use them in this first application cycle. But first, let's talk about the measurement properties of these scores. So the exam is built so that each of the sections includes more questions than the sections on the old exam. And the reason that that's done is that the MR5 committee heard from admissions folks again and again that they wanted to be able to use the section scores on the new exam in ways that allow them to look at students' strengths and weaknesses and to compare their individual section scores to information on the transcript. So we needed to add a few more questions per section in order to create scores that have the right level of accuracy to support that kind of use. And so these more accurate scores will provide you better information about your applicant's academic preparation. The downside, of course, is that these additional questions lengthen the test day. Excuse me. So the new exam is 6.5 hours long, which is longer than the old exam, which was 4.5 hours, but it is shorter than the paper and pencil test that was used from 1991 to 2006. And I want to say one more thing about test length. So the new exam was also designed to give examinees a little bit more working time per question. So examinees will have more time to read the passages, to consider the questions, and decide upon their answers. And we think this extra time is likely to be useful to all examinees, but maybe especially useful to examinees who are English language learning. So let's talk about the percentiles. So the percentile ranks will probably give you the clearest picture of your applicant's academic performance on the exam in this very first application cycle. So the percentile ranks will allow you to compare the scores of your applicants to the scores of others who prepared for the same exam. They'll show you how your applicants stack up in relationship to each other, and they describe the percent of applicants with the same or lower scores. And so you can look at these percentiles in relationship to students' courses and grades and any other academic data that you have for them, and look for consistencies and inconsistencies in the stories that these data tell. So you'll also get, as we've already said, confidence bands on the new score reports. They mark the ranges in which applicants' true scores probably lie, and they discourage committee members from overemphasizing small differences between applicants and their test scores. And then we've already talked about the score profiles and the fact that they help you look at an applicant's strengths and weaknesses across the 4 test sections. And so both of these kinds of information really support your holistic review. So how can you use these scores in 2016? So in 2016, we think you'll get applications with 3 types of scores. So we think about half of your applicants will submit scores from the old MCAT exam. About half of your applicants will submit scores from the new MCAT exam, and a small number will probably submit applications with scores from both. So how do you think about this mix of score information that you haven't dealt with in the past? So let's start with applicants who submit old scores, and because that's the easiest to talk about. And so for students who submit old scores, you know what to do. You know what these scores mean in your curriculum. You know which ones spell success in your program, so you use those scores in the way that you always have. For applicants who submit new scores, again, we recommend that you use the percentile ranks to begin attaching meaning to the score, so you can see how your individual applicants compare to each other and look at the other information that they provide about their academic preparation in their applications. If you want to create some conventions on the new score scale for which applicants you send secondary applications to, which you want to invite to interview at your school, one way to do that would be to look at the percentiles that are associated with the old scores that you used for these types of decision rules, find that percentile on the new score scale, and start your thinking there. But we recommend that you go slightly below the percentiles that were associated with the scores you use for these decision rules on the old scale, so that you give yourself a chance to see some applicants who are a little bit below those percentile levels. Remember, they've taken a different test. They've taken a test that tests some concepts that weren't on the exam in the past. So I think it would be smart to move down the percentile scale maybe 10 points, and give yourself a chance to look at the applications of some of those students to see what you think, and see if you think some of those students are promising, and that might inform the decision rules that you make for using percentiles on the new score, on the new test. So for applicants who submit scores from both exams, we recommend that you use the new scores. Students who took the old test and the new test probably took the new test because they weren't satisfied with their old scores, so their new scores are likely to be more telling. And then if you have an applicant with old scores and another one with new scores who seems otherwise comparable to you, then you might just think about the importance of the newly tested concepts in your school and use that as a way to think about which applicant you're more attracted to. So we want to finish up by talking about the tools that will be available to admissions officers and admissions committee members to make good use of the new test and scores. And we highlighted these at the beginning of the presentation, and we'll go into a little bit more detail here. So on the AAMC website will be a number of guides and videos and slide decks for admissions officers to share with their committee members. And some are short, some are long, some are high level, and some are low level, so admissions officers can look and see which types of materials would be most useful for their committee members. There's also an interactive score report, which I'm going to show you next, which gives you a chance to learn about the scores in different media. And then you'll also see on the website some early validity data that have been collected by folks at 11 medical schools on the new exam, and we'll talk about those as well. So very importantly, there's going to be a professional development conference for admissions and diversity affairs officers, and we'll give you the details about that at the very end. So here's a picture of the interactive score report, and committee members who are using it can click on the different green dots on the screen, and they might get a fact sheet or hear somebody talk about the sections themselves and what they test, or the scores, or the confidence band. So they can use that as a way to learn about the things that they'd like to get more information on. As I said, there are videos and fact sheets, and the fact sheets can be printed out so you can keep that information in front of you as well. So I want to talk for just a second about some early validity data on the new exam, and these are validity data that look at the psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior section. And the schools that worked on this section worked on it because they wanted to get some information about how this test, which is unlike tests you've seen in the past, correlates with performance in early coursework in their schools. And so 11 medical schools volunteered for this study. They gave a prototype of the new psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior section to 2,000 entering medical students, and then they've been correlating these scores with students' coursework and grades in courses and clerkships in courses that teach behavioral and social sciences content. So the hope is that these early validity results will help committee members feel comfortable using these scores in 2016 selection. So more generally, we asked medical school admissions officers whether they were interested in participating in validity research on the new exam, and over 65 medical schools volunteered. 21 of them were selected to participate in a long-term validity research project, and they represent medical schools of different types with different missions, public and private, in different regions of the country. 11 of those schools are participated in the psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior section validity work, and then 17 are participating in the larger research. So here's a peek at the data that the 11 medical schools collected. So again, they gave a prototype of the psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior section to 2,000 entering medical students. Then they correlated those scores with course grades in behavioral sciences courses, neuroscience courses, and epidemiology and public health courses. And the correlations look good. The median correlations across these different schools are solidly above the threshold for medium effect size. They also compare well to correlations between the natural sciences scores on the old MCAT exam and courses in medical school that students took that would correlate with the biological and physical sciences section. So these are good correlations, and they can compare well to correlations on the old exam that look at natural sciences coursework. So again, there are 17 medical schools that are participating in the broader validity research project. They're looking at the new exam to make sure that it predicts medical students' academic success in the way that it should, that it supports their diversity efforts and is fair, and that it helps admissions officers and committee members do their work in a good way. And so the 17 schools will create a body of evidence about the new exam, and those reports will be released annually. So let's end this webinar with a description of the Professional Development Conference that's coming up in June. It's June 18th through 21st in Miami. The first day of the conference will be devoted entirely to the MCAT. And so there'll be lots of great information. You'll have a chance to learn about the new exam, the new scores, to think about how you might use them in 2016 selection, and importantly, there'll be lots of time to work with your colleagues, to practice and to think and to try out different ways of using these, this new exam and score. So I want to thank you for listening to this webinar, and we would love to hear your questions. So if there's other information that you would like, or points about which we've been unclear, we'd love to have you contact us. So the email address to use to get more or better information is MCAT2015 at AAMC.org.